You've probably seen news stories where a criminal in the United States is sentenced to several life terms, or even tens of thousands of years in prison. Obviously, no one can physically serve such a sentence. A person simply wouldn't live that long. So why do federal laws and the laws of some US states allow for punishments like this? That's what we'll talk about in this video. In the United States, unlike in Europe, there is no maximum limit on prison terms for criminals convicted on multiple charges. Moreover, if a person commits several crimes, the sentences can be added together. As a result, some offenders receive prison terms lasting thousands of years. But wouldn't it be easier to replace such sentences with the death penalty? It turns out it's not that simple. In many US states, the death penalty has been abolished. At the same time, there is usually a minimum term that a prisoner must serve before becoming eligible for parole. Because of this rule, even a highly dangerous criminal could theoretically be released early. However, if a person is sentenced to multiple life terms, even if parole is granted for one sentence, they immediately begin serving the next one. For example, in Oklahoma there is what's known as the 85% rule. Under this rule, a prisoner must serve at least 85% of their sentence before they can apply for early release. And if the sentence totals several thousand years, parole is simply out of the question. Now let's take a look at some of the longest prison sentences in history. A record listed in the Guinness Book of Records belongs to child rapist Charles Scott Robinson. A jury in Oklahoma insisted that the district judge sentence him to 5,000 years for each proven count of child rape. As a result, Robinson received 30,000 years in prison, with the clarification that all sentences must be served consecutively. In 1996, also in Oklahoma, Alan Wayne McLaurin was sentenced to 12,750 years in prison. He was convicted of kidnapping, rape, and armed robbery. McLaurin had an accomplice named Darren Anderson. Back in 1993, Anderson was sentenced to 2,200 years, but he appealed the verdict. After the case was reviewed again, the judge sentenced Anderson to 11,000 years in prison. One of his later appeals resulted in his sentence being reduced by 500 years. The so-called killer clown, John Wayne Gacy, is considered one of the most brutal serial killers in history. In the 1970s, he kidnapped, raped, and murdered 33 young men. For these crimes, he was sentenced to 12 death sentences and 21 life terms. In 1994, one of those sentences was carried out. Gacy was executed by lethal injection. However, extreme sentences are not unique to the United States. For example, in 1989 in Thailand, Fraud Suchamoy Thitpiaso and 7 of her accomplices were sentenced to 141,078 years in prison for large-scale banking fraud. This case is also listed in the Guinness Book of Records. Meanwhile, former high-ranking official of the Palestinian Authority Abdullah Ghalib al-Barghouti received 67 life sentences for organizing multiple terrorist attacks against Israelis. Subscribe and hit the like button.